They say you can judge a person's character by how they treat the janitor. If that's true, then SilverTech Enterprises, a powerhouse in San Francisco's tech industry, has failed that test miserably. Meet Eleanor Hughes, 65 years old. She's been working at SilverTech for over a decade, quietly pushing her cleaning cart through the company's sleek, glass-paneled hallways. Her uniform, once crisp blue, is now faded and worn. To the ambitious employees chasing success, she's just part of the background, someone they pass by without a second glance. Every morning, Eleanor arrives before the sun rises. She dusts the pristine desks of high-ranking executives who don't know her name. She empties trash bins overflowing with discarded ideas, confidential memos, and coffee-stained napkins. At lunchtime, she watches as employees gather in groups, laughing and networking, never inviting her into their world. By the time she leaves at night, the office hums with late-night ambition, yet no one ever stops to say, "Good evening, Eleanor." But what they don't know is this: Eleanor sees everything. She's been here longer than most of the executives calling the shots. She knows who's secretly gunning for a promotion, who's covering up financial misdeeds, and who whispers in the boardroom corners. She's seen alliances form and crumble, friendships turn into betrayals, and power plays that would shake the company if exposed. To them, she's invisible. But in reality, Eleanor may know more about SilverTech's future than even its CEO. In the towering glass and steel fortress that is SilverTech Enterprises, power flows like an untamed river, fast, relentless, and often cruel. For the executives who run the company, success is measured not just in deals closed, but in how easily they can belittle those beneath them. And no one enjoys this twisted game more than Logan Pierce. At 42, Logan is everything you'd expect from a senior executive at one of San Francisco's top tech firms: sharp, ambitious, and utterly ruthless. He's the type of man who thrives on dominance, who believes that respect should be demanded, not earned. But more than anything, Logan enjoys reminding low-level employees of their place in the corporate hierarchy, especially Eleanor Hughes. Eleanor, the 65-year-old janitor who moves through the office like a shadow, wiping down desks, emptying trash bins, and cleaning up after people who never acknowledge her presence. To Logan, she is nothing more than background noise, a part of the building's infrastructure, no more important than the lights that flicker on when he enters a room. So, when he sees her wiping down the long, polished conference table after a high-level meeting, he smirks. "Careful, Eleanor," he says, his voice dripping with mock concern. "That table probably costs more than your annual salary." Sitting across from him, Bryce Montgomery, the company's 50-year-old CFO, lets out a low chuckle. Bryce is another one who relishes the power that comes with his title. He doesn't just sign off on financial statements. He sees himself as a gatekeeper of wealth and status. He leans back in his chair, watching as Eleanor silently wipes away the fingerprints they've left behind. "You should be honored, really," Bryce says, smirking. "You get to clean up after the people who actually keep this company running." The two men exchange a glance, sharing a quiet, self-satisfied laugh. To them, Eleanor isn't a person. She's an afterthought, a relic from a generation that no longer matters in the fast-paced, tech-driven world of SilverTech. But what they don't realize is this: Eleanor is listening. She always listens. She has spent years observing men like Logan and Bryce. The way they talk when they think no one of importance is around. The hushed conversations in the boardroom. The names whispered with caution. The nervous glances when certain reports come across their desks. She knows the real power dynamics in the company, the secret rivalries, the alliances that form behind closed doors, the deals that are made in shadows. She has seen careers rise and fall, not because of talent, but because of well-timed betrayals and backstabbing. Logan and Bryce don't realize that the woman they mock has been collecting everything. The late-night calls, the panic shredding of documents, the whispers of an impending scandal. Eleanor doesn't react to their taunts. She never does. She simply listens, learns, and waits. Because one day, Logan Pierce and Bryce Montgomery will find themselves at the center of a storm. A scandal so big it will shake SilverTech to its core. And when that day comes, they will scramble to save themselves, searching desperately for answers. And that's when they'll finally notice Eleanor Hughes. But by then, it will be too late. For over a decade, Eleanor Hughes has pushed her cleaning cart through the halls of SilverTech Enterprises, unseen and ignored. She has scrubbed floors that executives walk across without a second thought, wiped down desks that belong to people who don't know her name, and picked up the discarded remains of meetings that decided the future of the company. To the employees of SilverTech, she is just a janitor. But they couldn't be more wrong. Eleanor isn't just a cleaning lady. She has a hidden connection to this company, one that no one suspects. Beneath the quiet demeanor and the worn-out uniform, she holds knowledge that could bring the entire corporation crashing down. And someone is finally starting to notice. The analyst who sees what others don't. Mia Carter is 28 years old, sharp, ambitious, and one of the few people at SilverTech who hasn't lost her sense of curiosity. As a marketing analyst, her job is to notice patterns, dissect consumer behavior, and predict trends before anyone else does. But lately, something else has caught her attention, something no algorithm could explain. Eleanor, unlike her colleagues, who rush past the janitor without a second glance, Mia has observed her. The way Eleanor lingers in certain places, always seeming to be around at the right time. The way her eyes flicker with understanding when she hears executives whisper in hushed voices. The way she never asks questions but always seems to know the answers. One afternoon, while waiting for a meeting to start, Mia finds herself alone in the conference room. Eleanor enters, pushing her cart, and quietly starts wiping down the table. For most people, this would be a moment of silence. But for Mia, it's an opportunity. "Hey, Eleanor," she says casually, leaning against the chair. "How long have you been working here?" Eleanor barely glances up. "A long time," she replies, her voice calm. Mia studies her for a moment. There's something about the way she speaks, like she's measuring every word before she says it. "You must have seen a lot," Mia continues, testing the waters. Eleanor finally meets her gaze, and for the first time, Mia feels it, a quiet intensity that sends a chill down her spine. It's like looking into the eyes of someone who knows everything. Eleanor gives a small, knowing smile. You'd be surprised what people say when they think no one is listening. Mia leans forward, lowering her voice. "You always seem to be in the right place at the right time. Almost like you're looking for something." Eleanor doesn't answer right away. Instead, she finishes wiping down the table, placing the rag neatly back into her cart. Then, she finally speaks. "I don't look for things," she says softly, "but I do find them." Mia's mind races. There's something here, something bigger than she originally thought. Eleanor isn't just some janitor who happens to overhear gossip. There's an intentionality to her presence, a reason why she remains at SilverTech. And that's when it hits Mia. This woman knows more about SilverTech than anyone in the company. The beginning of a dangerous truth. From that day on, Mia starts paying attention in a way she never has before. She watches Eleanor closely, noticing how she moves through the building like a ghost, never drawing attention to herself, yet always present. She wonders, what does Eleanor know? Why is she really here? And most importantly, who exactly is she? Because one thing is clear, Eleanor Hughes isn't just a woman with a mop and a bucket. She's something else entirely. And soon, everyone at SilverTech will find out exactly who she is. The annual performance review meeting at SilverTech Enterprises is nothing short of a corporate battleground. For the past year, executives have played their roles carefully, strategizing, cutting deals, and ensuring their numbers look impressive enough to secure their positions. Now, as they gather in the company's largest conference room, the air is thick with tension. This is the meeting where careers are made or destroyed. Executives shift in their seats, some flipping through their meticulously crafted reports, others glancing anxiously at the door. The CEO, Benjamin Foster, is known for being calculated, decisive, and unforgiving. If he's not impressed, you're as good as gone. At exactly 10 a.m., the door swings open. Foster enters, his presence commanding immediate silence. At 55, he is a man who has built an empire, whose words carry the weight of entire livelihoods. His sharp gaze sweeps across the room, assessing the executives who have spent the last week rehearsing their presentations down to the last word. But instead of taking his seat at the head of the table, he stops. His eyes land on someone no one expected. A woman standing quietly in the corner, her hands resting on the handle of a cleaning cart. Eleanor Hughes. For years, she has existed in the background, a fixture of the company no one truly acknowledged. The janitor, the invisible woman, the one people passed by without a second thought. Yet, in this moment, the most powerful man in the room is looking directly at her. And then, he speaks. Eleanor, I think it's time, isn't it? The words are calm, measured, and they shatter the room like a gunshot. A suffocating silence follows. Every executive freezes, their expressions flickering between confusion, shock, and a creeping sense of unease. Logan Pierce, the ruthless senior executive, grips the edge of the table, his knuckles whitening. Bryce Montgomery, the smug CFO, lets out a nervous chuckle, as if hoping this is some kind of elaborate joke. But no one laughs. Because Benjamin Foster isn't smiling. He isn't making an announcement. He isn't addressing anyone else in the room. He is speaking to Eleanor. And she isn't surprised. For the first time, people actually see her. Not as a janitor. Not as the woman they mocked, ignored, or looked past. But as someone who matters. Slowly, Eleanor steps forward. She doesn't look at the executives, doesn't acknowledge their confused, terrified stares. Instead, she keeps her gaze locked on Foster, her expression unreadable. Then, she nods. Yes, she says, her voice steady. It's time. The weight of those words sinks in, and the executives finally begin to understand. Something is happening. Something big. And Eleanor Hughes is at the center of it. The boardroom, once filled with tense energy and corporate bravado, now stands frozen in absolute shock. Executives who had spent years strategizing their rise up the SilverTech hierarchy now sit in stunned silence, their carefully rehearsed speeches forgotten. The CEO, Benjamin Foster, had just spoken words that shattered everything they thought they knew. Eleanor, I think it's time, isn't it? And Eleanor Hughes, the woman they had ignored, mocked, and dismissed as just a janitor, had simply nodded. Now, the silence is suffocating. Executives exchange nervous glances as if hoping someone, anyone, will explain what is happening. Logan Pierce, the arrogant senior executive who had spent years humiliating lower-level employees, looks like he's just seen a ghost. Bryce Montgomery, the smug CFO, leans forward, his usual confidence shattered. And then, Benjamin Foster speaks again. His voice is calm, but his words send shockwaves through the room. It's time they know the truth. He turns to Eleanor, a look of deep respect in his eyes. Eleanor exhales softly, stepping forward. No longer the shadow in the background. No longer the invisible woman pushing a cleaning cart through these halls. She lifts her gaze, looking directly at the men and women who have ruled this company with arrogance and greed. I own this company, she says simply. A collective gasp ripples through the room. Someone knocks over a glass of water. Papers are shuffled in confusion, but no one dares to speak. Because Eleanor Hughes isn't just a cleaning lady. She is the majority shareholder of SilverTech Enterprises. The weight of the revelation crushes the room. For years, these executives had prided themselves on their influence, their power plays, their ability to manipulate the corporate game. But Eleanor had been playing a game far bigger than any of them realized. She owns more of SilverTech than anyone else in this room. And now, she's ready to take control. Some executives look terrified, as if suddenly realizing the consequences of every dismissive glance, every condescending remark, every insult they had ever thrown her way. Others sit in stunned disbelief, struggling to process how they had been so blind to the power hidden in plain sight. For years, Eleanor had watched them, studied them. She had seen their secrets, their betrayals, their corruption. And now, the woman they thought was invisible owns them all. Eleanor takes another step forward, fully commanding the room in a way none of them ever thought possible. It's time for a change, she says. And for the first time in SilverTech history, the real leader has arrived. The tension in the boardroom is suffocating. Executives who once carried themselves with arrogance now sit rigid, their confidence crumbling under the weight of a truth they never saw coming. At the front of the room, Eleanor Hughes stands with quiet authority, her presence now more commanding than the men who had once dismissed her. The woman they overlooked, the woman they mocked, the woman they ignored. And now, she owns them all. She lets the silence linger, watching as the reality sinks in. Then, in a voice that is calm but unyielding, she speaks. For years, I've watched how you treat people. A flicker of unease spreads through the room. Every executive knows what they've done. The way they've spoken down to assistants, barked orders at interns, and ignored the workers who kept this company running. Eleanor's gaze sweeps across the table, her expression unreadable. I haven't just cleaned floors. I've studied this company inside and out. Logan Pierce shifts uncomfortably in his chair. His usual arrogance is nowhere to be seen. His fingers tighten around the armrest as if steadying himself. The man who had spent years humiliating those beneath him, mocking Eleanor herself, suddenly looks very, very small. Because he knows. He knows the way he's treated people. He knows the deals he's made behind closed doors. And now, staring at Eleanor, this woman he had dismissed as nothing, he is starting to wonder, what does she know about me? Eleanor doesn't break eye contact. She watches him, almost as if she can hear the frantic calculations happening in his head. The others notice too. Executives glance at Logan, sensing the shift in power, watching as a man who once thrived on dominance now sits in silent panic. This company has been run on greed, arrogance, and disregard for the very people who built it. The words land like a hammer. No one dares to speak. Bryce Montgomery, the CFO, swallows hard. He had laughed at Eleanor once, mocked her, but now? Now, he sits motionless, eyes darting to the exit like a trapped animal. Logan exhales sharply, trying to maintain his composure. But for the first time, he isn't the one in control. Eleanor is. And this is just the beginning. The room is frozen. Every executive at SilverTech Enterprises watches in stunned silence as Eleanor Hughes, the woman they had dismissed for years, stands at the head of the table, in control. The power shift is undeniable. And then, she turns. Her gaze lands squarely on Logan Pierce, the once dominant senior executive who built his career on arrogance and ruthlessness. The man who prided himself on humiliating those beneath him, who had always believed that power was something to be wielded without consequence. But today, the rules have changed. Logan, Eleanor says smoothly, her voice carrying an edge of steel. Do you remember what you said to me this morning? Logan forces a chuckle. It's the kind of nervous laugh a man gives when he realizes he's walking straight into his own reckoning. His mind races. What had he said? He had barely noticed Eleanor this morning, just as he had barely noticed her every other day for years. And then, it hits him. The conference room. He had been joking with Bryce Montgomery, making one of his usual condescending remarks. He had laughed as Eleanor wiped down the table, treating her as insignificant, just another faceless employee beneath his notice. And now, she is standing over him, and she remembers everything. Eleanor tilts her head slightly, waiting. She gives him a chance to respond, to acknowledge what he had said. But Logan, the man who always had something to say, finds himself at a complete loss for words. Logan Pierce, Eleanor says, her tone calm, controlled. You're fired. Effective immediately. Silence. It crashes over the room like a wave. Thick, suffocating, absolute. Logan blinks. The color drains from his face. His mouth opens, then closes, then opens again. But no words come out. For the first time in his career, Logan Pierce is speechless. A slow realization spreads through the room. This isn't just about Logan. This is a message. A message to every executive sitting at the table. A message to everyone who had ever dismissed, disrespected, or looked down on those they deemed unworthy. Disrespect has consequences. Logan scrambles for control. Now, wait a minute, he stammers, trying to summon his usual bravado. You can't. Eleanor raises a single eyebrow. I can. Her voice is unwavering. Final. Logan swallows hard. He looks to Benjamin Foster, the CEO, hoping for an ally. But Foster simply leans back in his chair, watching with quiet satisfaction. Because this isn't his decision. It's hers. The once powerful executive, who had spent years treating others as disposable, now finds himself discarded. Just like that. No negotiations. No warnings. No second chances. Logan Pierce, the man who thought he was untouchable, has just learned the harshest lesson of his life. Eleanor Hughes isn't just in charge. She's rewriting the rules. The tension in the boardroom is thick, hanging in the air like a storm about to break. Logan Pierce is still reeling, his once unshakable arrogance now shattered as he sits in stunned silence, fired in front of the very people he once ruled over. But Eleanor Hughes isn't done. She turns her gaze to Bryce Montgomery. The chief financial officer smirks, crossing his arms as if he's watching a minor inconvenience unfold. Unlike Logan, he's not panicking. He thinks he's safe. After all, Bryce was always the one who played things carefully, who made his moves in the shadows. He was the puppet master, orchestrating deals, covering up scandals, ensuring that no matter what happened, he always landed on his feet. He leans back in his chair, giving Eleanor a knowing look. But Eleanor just tilts her head. You thought no one was watching. The smirk on Bryce's face falters. You were wrong. A hush falls over the room. Some executives glance at Bryce, curiosity flickering in their eyes. What does she know? What has she seen? Bryce sits up a little straighter, clearing his throat. Now, Eleanor, he says smoothly, trying to regain control. Let's not get carried away. But Eleanor doesn't let him finish. Bryce Montgomery, you're fired. Effective immediately. The words cut through the air like a blade. A collective gasp spreads through the room. Bryce's confidence shatters in an instant. He blinks, his mind scrambling to make sense of what just happened. Wait, you can't just... Eleanor holds up a hand. It's done. Executives exchange glances. Some look relieved. The toxic leadership they had suffered under for years is finally crumbling. Others sit rigid, fear creeping into their eyes as they realize the truth. They could be next. Eleanor Hughes isn't just firing people. She's cleansing SilverTech from the inside out. The dust has barely settled from the firings of Logan Pierce and Bryce Montgomery, but Eleanor Hughes doesn't stop. She stands at the head of the boardroom, no longer the overlooked janitor, but the true power behind SilverTech Enterprises. The remaining executives sit motionless, their fear and uncertainty palpable. Eleanor surveys the room, her voice steady, unwavering. This company will no longer be built on greed and arrogance, but on respect and integrity. The words ring out, cutting through the corporate tension like a knife. She isn't just making a statement. She's making a promise. For years, SilverTech had been a battlefield, driven by ruthless ambition, corruption, and unchecked power. That ends today. She lets her words sink in before delivering a final warning. If you can't adapt, you can leave. The message is clear. Change is here. Those who refuse to evolve won't survive it. At the far end of the table, Mia Carter watches in awe. She had always sensed that Eleanor was different, that there was something more beneath the surface. But to witness this transformation in real time, to see a woman who had been invisible for years now command an entire empire, is nothing short of history in the making. Then, quietly, Benjamin Foster nods. The CEO had always known the truth. Eleanor was the rightful leader all along. And now, everyone else knows it too. The boardroom is forever changed. The toxic reign of Logan Pierce and Bryce Montgomery is over, and in its place, a new era begins, one built on respect, integrity, and real leadership. For Eleanor Hughes, this isn't just a personal victory. She didn't just reclaim her power. She transformed an entire company's culture. For years, SilverTech was a place where greed thrived, where people like her were dismissed, where arrogance ruled. But today, that ends. Today, Eleanor has proven that real strength isn't in titles or power plays. It's in resilience, wisdom, and knowing your worth. She turns to Mia Carter, the one person who had truly seen her before anyone else did. Mia is still in awe, taking in everything that just happened. Eleanor offers her a small, knowing smile and says, "Never let anyone underestimate your value." Mia nods, those words sinking deep, a lesson she will carry forever. The final shot. With the company's future secured, Eleanor steps outside. The crisp San Francisco air greets her as she takes a deep breath, letting it all sink in. The skyline stretches before her, a city of endless ambition and power. But today, it feels different. Because this time, she's not just part of the background. She is the legacy that will last. The lesson of a lifetime. The story of Eleanor Hughes is more than just a tale of power shifts and corporate reckoning. It's a reminder, a warning, that no one should ever be underestimated. For years, the executives at SilverTech Enterprises believed that power belonged only to those with the right title, the biggest office, and the loudest voice. But Eleanor proved them wrong. True power doesn't come from a title. It comes from wisdom, patience, and integrity. She waited, watched, and learned. And when the time was right, she stepped forward and took control. Not with greed, not with arrogance, but with the kind of leadership that truly transforms a company, a culture, and a legacy. And now, her story lives on. What's your power? If this story inspired you, if you believe in the power of patience, wisdom, and knowing your worth, then don't forget to like this video if you believe in real leadership. Share it with someone who needs this reminder. Subscribe for more stories that challenge the way we see the world. Because sometimes, the most powerful person in the room is the one you never saw coming.